You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
All right, it's the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, representing for CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals Network. And I'm joined today by one of the best quarterbacks of recent memory for the Miami Hurricanes, Malik Rosier. Thanks for joining the show with me today, Malik.
Thank you, Marcus. Glad to be here.
Nice. So yeah, it's spring, man. It's spring football, and it kind of came kind of fast for me. And we were out there for practice, for the first practice, and got to see the guys go out there. So we'll discuss that in a minute. But I do want to kind of talk about that 2017 run, man. It was really an amazing run for most Hurricanes fans, going on that undefeated run and just really bringing excitement back to the Hurricanes program during that year. I know that was, obviously you were engineering that at quarterback, but just what are some of your best memories from that year, and what was the craziest thing that you can recall from 2017?
Yeah. I'll say a lot of stuff that I remember was just like the locker room with the guys. One thing I can say about at least most of the South Florida teams that I've been on is that we have a lot of dancers. So the locker room is usually pretty lit. Guys are dancing around before the games, after the games, especially that year when we were winning. That's one thing I genuinely loved was just like the after game environment, especially like being with the guys. You got guys like Lawrence Cage or Ramon Richards all dancing in the corner, having a good time. So to me, that was some of the most memorable stuff. Obviously, beating Florida State, beating Notre Dame. Florida State, I think, was like 7 years running. We were losing to them. Notre Dame, we should have beat them the year prior with Brad. And then, they had that, goal line fumble that Deshaun Kaiser somehow jumps back on and they win it. So I know that was a game that we definitely had a chip on our shoulder about. So one thing I can say, and it's something that I really see in this year's team is, you're having a lot of the guys that have been in the program for 2 or 3 years starting to lead. You're having like Cameron Kitchens, TVD. Hopefully you get guys like Xavier Restrepo, Don Chaney, those guys to start, leading behind them. But, to me, that was one thing that that 2017 team was just player-led. You had guys like Jaquan Johnson, Chad Thomas, Kendrick Norton, Braxton Berrios, a lot of those guys really helped support me. If there was something that I wouldn't necessarily say that like I didn't want to say, but there was times where I didn't have to lead because, I had other guys that would take the step before me or, they were already on top of it. And so that's something that I slowly see in this team is that, you don't have one sole leader. You have about 4 to 5 really good leaders that can all lead in different areas.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And this team, as we know, Cristobal is going into his second year, just like Mark Richt went into his second year in 2017. So I'm not saying that this team's going to go 10-3, but there's definitely a chance for that, based on the leadership that we see so far with this team. Because Jaquan Johnson, just like you said, very similar to Cam Kitchens as far as his leadership, and then Braxton Berrios, that slot guy, very similar to Xavier Restrepo, who is now going into his third year with the Hurricanes. So going into this season and really just kind of taking a look at the roster, because we finally got to look at the roster, within the week. What are your first thoughts when you kind of see the roster and you saw the team at that first practice? What are your thoughts, or what are your expectations for 2023?
The first thing I'll say was that the offensive line looks really big. I remember being at Georgia, and there's no disrespect to any offensive linemen that we've had, but I remember being at Georgia and like seeing those guys and then coming back and seeing our offensive line, and there was definitely a size difference. You walk out there now, you got guys like Sampson and, the other freshmen coming in. They're both, 6'6", 6'7". They're really big guys. They look like they're about 20, 21 years old. Like if you told me that Sampson was a freshman, like I wouldn't believe you. So that's where, I really like the way that Mario has recruited. I think that's the first thing that you're really starting to see is a size difference. And really like the biggest thing that I want to say is that in the past years when I've been on Miami teams, even like my freshman year team, like you still have Dion, um, Feliciano, Eric Flowers, Philip Dorsett. I can probably name about Denzel Perryman. That's 5 guys right there that are still playing in the NFL off my 2014 team. So one thing I've always said about Miami football teams is that there's always talent. Like you're not going to find a roster when it's like, oh, we don't have someone that's fast or big or tall. My biggest thing is like fundamentals and discipline. That's always been something to where like, we've always either had like a crucial third down penalty that's came against us. We've had too many penalties going throughout the whole game. We're undisciplined to where like we have a holding call on a big run, or we have like a drop pass because we're not focused enough to look it in, or maybe, you have a quarterback. Like I've been there where like, my head was so in emotions that I allow it to take over the game at some point. So, just controlling your emotions and just being disciplined. Like that's one thing that I would say most programs do a really good job of, or at least the good ones, is that they beat you with fundamental football and then they allow, the athletic ability of their players to take over. And I think that's just in the past is something that, Miami has relied on really heavily on recruiting and not saying, hey, we're going to recruit and develop. And that's one thing that at least with this staff, I think that, Mario found guys that not only can recruit their ass off, but also that will develop these kids, understand football, are super relatable. So I think that he's finally starting, to find the staff that gels. And it's hard. You're bringing in guys from different areas that coach with different people that might not or like what, the OC's bringing in. But I think these guys just want to win. You can tell a lot of the guys that he's hiring or at least Miami alumni, so they genuinely care about the university itself. So I think he's definitely going about it the right way.
Yeah, I agree. And let's talk about some of those staff additions. We had a few coaches added to the staff this spring or in the past few months. The coordinators in particular, the media actually got a chance to really get a feel of the new coordinators with Shannon Dawson and Lance Guidry. Particularly with Shannon Dawson, you had a chance to kind of, maybe see his offense at all. And what do you think his offense really brings to Miami? And what are some of the players do you think that would probably benefit the most from this offense?
Yeah, so I'll say what his offense brings is versatility. One thing that you're going to see is that if he has a good player, his offense isn't locked into like, hey, like there are certain offenses where like you have to move a player to a certain position to create openings. You're going to see, if he has really good running backs, he's going to be able to, get the running backs the ball, whether it's run game, whether it's pass game, whether it's screen game. There was times to where like, he didn't have a running back, so he had to go, more spread. He couldn't run it as much. So that's one thing that I really like about his offense is that, if players goes down or maybe, he has an elite tight end and receiver and he has an okay running back, he's able to, make his offense flexible so that, that tight end receiver are eating. And then, if I have a good running back, they'll be able to implement. I think there was one year where he had a couple backs that had over 600 total yards between like rushing and receiving, which is kind of what you want. You want a back that not only can run but can catch out the backfield. And I think it creates a lot of problems for defenses. I'm super excited. I think the hardest problem that he's going to have, and it's something that just comes along with the air raid, is that a lot of these air raid offenses, you got to know spacing and you got to know timing, really for the receiver. So I got to know, where my split is. Am I -2 from the hash? Am I -1? Am I +1, +2? Because the spacing that you create also, creates windows for the quarterback. Secondly, is finding grass. I'll give you guys a great example. There was a third down versus Florida State. We're at Florida State. Florida State was a really, really big two-man team. So our combination for two-man was the outside lane would want to go, and then Braxton would run a whip. So he would go in, and then he would break out. But one third down, Florida State decided to go to cover two instead of two-man. And when Braxton broke out, he realized it like, oh, shit, the guy's not running with me. So instead of me, just running out into the corner, he settles down. I hit him in between, the corner and the linebacker. He gets vertical and he gets to first. But that was something that wasn't scripted. That was something that, he used football IQ. He understood spacing and he kind of understood what was going on. So when you're playing in an air raid game, you got to have, receivers that understand kind of what's going on. Like they can't just understand, oh, I got a whip. Yeah, I got a whip, but what am I running my whip off of? Is it man? Is it zone? Where is he going to settle at? So as like one thing that at least I was taught a lot of the air raid was, receivers try to find grass, try to find the open areas. And it just takes a lot of, the offensive coordinators, teaching these guys, where the open areas is versus certain coverages, whether it's too high, one high in cover three. And so that to me is like, once he can teach the receivers that, this offense really has no limit. Just because it's very hard to cover something where there's like subtle adjustments based on what you're running. It's not set routes. It's kind of like, hey, if it's cover three, you're going to go higher. If it's cover two, you're going to bend it flat because that safety is going to be over the top of you. So that's kind of where, they got to understand the coverages, because it can start to adjust the routes for the quarterback.
See, just based on what you've explained right there, it just makes me feel that there's only going to be a few really receivers that will be in this rotation. I
think there will be some. I really think it's about how fast they pick up on it. Secondly, I think it's about what he implements.
Yeah.
One thing that's really good about a good fundamental offense is that, like, if you go back and watch LSU when they had Burrow and Jamar Chase and Thompson, when you go back and watch Alabama when they had Tua, especially Alabama when they played Oklahoma, there's literally one drive where all they ran was inside zone double slant, inside zone 3x1, RPO with a single slant. And I think one time they went like slant out or go out, sorry. But you can be simple, and as long as you're fundamental and you're better than the other team, you can literally beat them. That's one thing that I don't really care about, Coach Dawson installing 500 plays. Like, he doesn't need to do that. I'd rather him install 30 plays that everyone can execute. Everyone's moving fast. And then it's the attention to detail. Like, hey, I have a crossing route, but, the coverages dictate how my crossing route looks. And to me, I think it's more about that side. I do expect there to be some very unique plays and creative plays. But, I think that the only way for us to be successful is basically these guys to start at least from ground zero on, like, football IQ, the football details, things like that, you would expect these kids to be taught, but you really don't know, because some of these coaches just teach X's and O's. They don't teach, like, defensive breakdowns, defensive IQs, different things like that. So I hope that's something that, Coach Dawson is slowly integrating into this offense.
From what I hear from the receivers, it is being integrated in the offense. These receivers are already saying that, hey, I'm already learning more from Dawson than I've learned in the past couple of years.
Yeah, well, that's because Dawson has to teach that. His offense is only going to be successful when he knows that the receivers can make subtle adjustments. And that's just how the game of football is played. When you talk about really good offenses, there was times like you see Kansas City and you can tell Juju Smith has like a crossing route, but he sees to Tampa and he sits it right down in front of the mic, because he understands if I'm running across and that's the only area of the field that's going to be open for me to catch it. And, that's not technically how the route's supposed to be ran, but he understands the bigger picture because he understands football. And so that to me is kind of, when the good air raids are really good, everyone on the field at least understands what the coverages are and where the holes are in the coverage. So that's something that I'm definitely glad that he's teaching them, because to me, that's the only way to be successful. You can't have kids out there just saying, hey, I'm running a 12-yard dig. Okay, cool. If it's quarters, what are you expecting? If it's two, what are you expecting? If it's cover three, like, you should obviously have an idea of where the weaknesses and where the holes are in the defense. And so to me, a good air raid offense is teach everyone. So I'm glad he's teaching that.
Yeah. Players like Xavier Restrepo, who's just a really smart kid. That's a kid that I've known and covered for years in high school. And also Nathaniel Joseph, also very, very smart kid. I had a chance to talk to him right after practice, and he said that, it's easy. The offense is easy for him. And that they've installed a bevy of pass plays, and he said maybe there's only 4 run plays that they've installed at this point. It's super early, and they're not even pads yet. But is that how you expect this offense to be, though? Do you expect this offense to be, 65, 75 passing?
I expected to be more like 60-40 run game. The only way that I would see that this offense becomes super pass dominant is really 2 ways. One, we're behind in a game, which obviously is a bad situation. Secondly, if for some reason they're biting heavy on RPOs. I think he wants to run. I think we have the line to run. I think we have the running backs to create a run game. Like I said, I think there was one team where it had like 3 running backs all over 500 plus yards. And only in the year prior, I know he had his starter go down, and then right after his starter went down, his second string guy went down. So he was, running with his third string running back. So he had to adjust. So that's where, like I was talking about earlier, where his offense is super flexible depending on who he has. But at least when I talked to him on Saturday, like, he wants to run the ball. I think every offensive coordinator knows the only way to set up a good pass game is, to get them into cover one, make them go to, cover one. You can't sit there and beat a team in cover two all day. That's if you watch Georgia, that's what they try to sit. And they try to sit with a 5-man box and beat you with a 5-man box. And so the only way to really counter that is to run. So I think that, between him and Mario, they have that understanding of, hey, Mario, you bring me good offensive line, give me some good running backs. I'll have a good enough pass game to where we can run the ball and then complement it with the pass. So I do think that he's still going to have Mario's, mindset of running the ball. But I think, the good news is he is an air raid guy. So if we ever need to rely on the pass, at least we have someone that we know can sit there and live in the pass game. So I think we have a really, really good, at least strong combo between, air raid and running game. But I really see it being more, 60-40 running the ball, especially through the first couple games.
Would you say that this offense compared to last year would be like last year? I looked at it and I told myself this is more of an offense that's has the run trying to set up the pass game. Would this be the opposite, where the pass game is ultimately going to open up holes in the run game?
Yes and no, and really, I think that depends on how. I mean, this is going to sound bad, but how unselfish our quarterbacks are. One thing I know about air raids is that whenever you're in a really good traditional air raid, yes, you're going to attack the field vertically, but like if you guys go back and watch how team plays Leach, they made sure that they didn't give them the vertical balls, they didn't give them the 4 vert. So I'm very interested to see how teams play us, but I think the only way to really set up a good run game is the ability to throw slants, hitches, swing, make these guys cover sideline to sideline. That's one thing that when I watched the first practice, he was really big on getting the ball out quick, letting these guys catch and run, getting them open field. One of the hardest things that for defensive guys, tackling an open field. And a lot of that, especially in air raid, comes from quick games like tunnel screens, from double slants, from swings to the back. And so to me, whenever you can start adding run game and you can, start catching simple slants for 5 to 6 yards or hitting a back out the backfield, and, maybe he makes one guy miss and now, they're nervous. Hey, we got to bring guys closer. We got to load the box. And now you start hitting them, with switch moves and double moves and things like that. And to me, it starts a lot with the quick game. If you guys go back and watch Mississippi State, they eat people alive with 4-yard hitches. You're going to get deep? Okay, cool, 4-yard hitches. And then one time that your corner misses, he's going to go 25 yards. And now you're frustrated. Then you come closer, and now I go over the top. And I think that's the same way Coach Dawson works. So that's how a lot of those air raid guys go, and they're really big on quick game. I know that's what I am, is quick game should be 95 to 100% completions. It's, it's right in front of your face. You know where you're going. It's 1 to 2 to ball out. So that's really where I think he's at, and I really love that for our guys, because it's real simple decision. We have great athletes that if you make one guy miss, then you never know, they could take it to the house. So I think that's kind of where their mindset is, at least right now in the pass game, is just, hey, we need to feed our receivers easy catchable balls and let them, make guys miss after the catch.
If you could just expand on what you mean by quarterbacks need to be unselfish, what would a selfish quarterback be?
So a selfish quarterback is going to, let's say you see quarters, right? And for some reason you see that safety deep. Some quarterbacks might say, screw it, I'm still going to throw this quarters post. That was there. I can't lie. There was times where, I kind of felt like that with Amon Richards, just because the guy was a freak of nature, saying, hey, if I got a one-on-one matchup, I'm going to throw it. But there's other times where you'll know, hey, the back could come open, or, maybe I could check it down, but you're going to try to squeeze a dig or maybe a seam route, something in between two guys when they're deep, but you want that 15 to 20 yard completion. I feel like that's one thing that, at least in the past, last year's offense was set on that. Coach Dawson's offense isn't set like that. To me, his quick game offense is very similar to Georgia Tech's run game, where it's take what they give you, 4 to 5 yards work, because over time, they're not going to give you those slants and hitches all game. So that to me is the biggest thing, is don't be frustrated with the underneath passes. Give it to your tight ends, give it to your running back in open field. And I would just say, I don't think we have a selfish quarterback, but to me, those are things when you have a quarterback that, wants to always make the big play, wants to throw, the 10 to 15, 20-yard route instead of just checking down to the back. That's whenever these offenses really do struggle, because sometimes they are meant, to get guys to go deep and then throw it underneath to someone that's running a drag or maybe a lower level dig.
Gotcha. Well, let's dive deeper into these quarterbacks. Obviously, Tyler Van Dyke is the guy with Jakari Brown behind him and the young Emory Williams there. Last year, Tyler Van Dyke, if you would just assess him and that season and what went wrong, what would you say?
I would say that Tyler struggles with what every quarterback struggles with. To me, it's never with most quarterbacks. It's never the physical aspect. It's a lot of the mental stuff. Whether you're having a bad day, a bad year, a bad practice. I know there was some I don't want to say trust issues, but obviously with him losing Xavier, there was newer guys in there, and he was like, sometimes they drop it, sometimes they catch it. So I got to be able to just trust them at all points. It wasn't like Tyler all of a sudden couldn't throw it deep. Tyler all of a sudden couldn't do X, Y, Z. I will say that there were some physical stuff. Me and him went over it, which I think are really going to help him. We actually talked yesterday, and I even complimented him on it. So I was like, "This is a great job with moving your feet. Like I could tell by your feet, where you were going to throw the ball." And he was like, "Yeah, that's something that I've really been focused on." So you can tell that the guy's been watching his film. The guy wants to grow. He wants to get better. And I think last year he was just in such a whirlwind of like trying to learn new offense, trying to live up to a standard, trying to be the guy. And I think now that he's went kind of through the failures, he's looked back and said, where can I get better? How can I be better? And I think we're going to see that, and that's really what I'm hoping. It like when you talk to any great inventors, scientists, whatever, they don't really talk about your failures. They don't talk about maybe you had 100 failures, but if you have one year where you go out and you win the ACC championship, they're not going to remember last year. They're going to remember this year. You know what I mean? And it's really about that mindset of saying, hey, I know what happened last year. I'm not going to sit here and not forget about it, but, I'm going to let it motivate me. I'm going to figure out, how can I get better? And then it's going to fuel me into this year. And that's really what I see in Tyler, is a guy that, is very critical of himself, has a high standard for himself. And he's someone that, wants to live up to his own standard. I just think last year there was a lot of, social media pressure. I even had people asking me, is he going to be the next like Ken Dorsey or Gino Torretta? And I'm like, dude, I just want Tyler Van Dyke to be Tyler Van Dyke. You know what I mean? Whoever he comes out to be after is fine. But I think last year he was just, he had people in his ear. And I think this year, it was a very humbling experience to say, hey, at any point, this game is as good as it can be. It can be just as bad. So I think every quarterback needs that, to be honest with you. And I think that he's going to have a great year this year. And I think that he's going to ball, to be honest.
Awesome. Sounds like you got a pretty close bond with Tyler Van Dyke.
Yeah, we've talked a couple of times. He's a good guy. He wants to work. That's one thing that I would say about the kid when it comes to the love of the game, the love for the university and his teammates. Like that's never in question. And so that's one thing that I at least know about that guy.
And Jakari Brown, do you work with him or talk?
Work with Jakari. I would say out of everyone in that room, Jakari definitely has the highest ceiling. That guy to me reminds me of a taller version of RG3. From a utility standpoint, he's probably one of the fastest guys on the team. He's definitely one of the tallest. He's long and lanky. Yeah, I was going to say, my biggest thing to Jakari is that you've gotten here off of athletic ability. Okay, cool. So what are you going to do now when there's defensive ends? And you can't say there's not, because you look at Nolan Smith running a 4.39 40. There's going to be guys that are faster than you. There's going to be guys that are bigger than you. There's going to be guys that are stronger than you. So if they take away your athletic ability, can you sit in the pocket and beat people within the pocket? And that's my biggest thing to him. That's my biggest challenge to him, is that we all see you run. We all love the way you run. We all love the athletic tools that you have. But you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you have to be a quarterback. And to me, that was the biggest thing that Lamar Jackson had to prove when he got to the league, was that, he could beat people in the pocket. Obviously, we saw how electric his legs were. But if you go back and watch the last couple of years, there were games where Lamar didn't have a lot of rushing yards. Or maybe he did rush, but it was later on in the game after teams started playing contain. So that's my biggest thing to him is, use your athletic ability. When they give you a chance to do zone read, or, if everyone gets deep and, they take away your passes, then you got to run. But, my biggest thing to him was, as fundamentally sound as you can be, that's what you have to be. Because at the end of the day, when you're in an air raid offense, it is cool to run, but sometimes, you might only have 4 or 5 passes, and they might only be quick game, double slants, go out, some swings, and maybe you take 1 or 2 shots. But in a lot of the air raids that I played in, it was about getting the ball in and out of your hands. It was about creating space, about making guys tackle in space. And a lot of times it's all about accuracy. It's not like, can you throw it 60, 70 yards? It's, hey, can you hit a slant in between 2 guys and protect our receiver? Can you put it on his upfield shoulder when there's a DB on his backside? That to me is a part of the game that, obviously he has a physical ability. There's not a throw on the field that he can make or that he can't make. I think, he has the arm talent to make every throw. It's just about, and it's a big thing I was on Tyler's behind about a couple years ago, okay, cool, you made it this one time. But if I sat here and said, this is your fundamentals, you got to throw the same slant to the same person 10 times. Can you go at least 9 for 10? If you can't, we got work to do. You know what I mean? Like, I can ask you to be perfect, but I can ask you to be damn close to perfect. So that's where, I've been trying to help him with his mindset is saying, hey, it's cool we made the pass once, but are your mechanics good enough that you can make that pass at least 9 out of 10 times? And so, you've seen him, and I've really worked with him, and I'm going to try to get with him, but you can see that he's definitely taking a big emphasis on his mechanics, on, have a good base, having a good balance. I actually gave him a little bit of tips after Saturday's practice stuff that, I thought could help him. But as far as, work ethic, having the ability, Jakari Brown is definitely the most athletic kid in the building, and he has everything that he wants. It's really going to be about how fast he learns and, how well he can develop his fundamentals, because outside of that, like, he has every other tool. Like, he's a leader. The guys love him. Great personality, big smile. He can definitely be a face of a franchise. So it's about him just cleaning up a couple stuff.
Yeah. Love his personality. Love the kid. Loved his tape, high school.
Yeah.
You made a significant jump from 2016 to 2017 statistically. Do you think Jakari Brown has potential to really kind of make that statistical jump if he gets, playing time? Obviously, Tyler Van Dyke's the guy, but do you see that possibly happening for Jakari?
Yeah, it could definitely happen. I think there's some ways that he can get into the game. I see him getting in a lot of maybe 3rd and shorts, 1 to 2, maybe some red zone things. But my biggest thing, Jakari, is don't focus on, you running the ball. We all know that you are crazy electric. Focus on your pass game, saying, hey, coach, when I get into the game, what are the 4 to 5 routes that I'm going to get? It's probably going to be a fade, maybe a slant, an out, and then maybe 1 or 2 outs, maybe a corner or something. Like I don't even know the other 2, but usually there's a fade, an out, and then some type of slant when you're dealing with dual threat quarterbacks. So my biggest thing to him is focus on those throws. Make sure you can go 9 of 9, 10 of 10. So when you do get a chance, throw the ball, that you make them eat, or you take advantage of that. Because a lot of times, especially when he comes in, you're going to see a lot of teams go cover 0. They're probably going to go cover 1 with a low safety. They're going to force him to try to throw the ball. So when they do, take full advantage and hope that, when your receiver catches it, it's a miss. Now you have a passing touchdown. Because, when you walk in the field, everyone knows that you're going to want to run the ball because of how electric you are with the football in your hands. But you got to show them the same way that I'm electric in the run game. I'm the same way in the pass game. That if you guys give me a sliver of hope, I'm going to hit the receiver and I'm going to make you guys pay. So that's really where, I've been trying to be hard on him, is saying, hey, we love your athletic ability, but you can't live off that, especially not versus good teams. When you're playing Georgia, Alabama, or Ohio State, the same way that I know you want to run, their DC knows that you want to run. The difference is, there will be certain teams like Georgia Tech, maybe like a Duke, where you're just going to be way more athletic than most of the guys on the field. So you get away with it, which is fine. But, when you're playing in the college playoffs, or, when you're playing Texas A&M, you're not going to be able just to run around there freely. They're just too big, too fast. That's really what I'm trying to get through his head, is take the opportunities when you get it. But, there's going to be teams that definitely take it away from you.
That's definitely one of the things I admired about you and your game, is that it's not like you were looking to run. To me, it seems like your runs always came on 3rd down. When it was the last option, and you're like, oh, I just got to tuck it and run. And a lot of times you made those first downs. So I did want to ask the question about dual threat quarterbacks, because I'm on the end where in today's college football, I feel like you need a dual threat quarterback, or you need a quarterback with some running ability. If you look at some of the great college football quarterbacks, even the last 2 that won the Heisman, like Bryce Young and Caleb Williams, these guys can run. They can pass too as well.
I mean, even look at Stetson Bennett,
is a threat.
National championship. Look at Max Duggan. Didn't Max Duggan run a 4.5, 4.6? So yes, no, I agree. To me, you don't have to be the 4.4, 4.5, type of athlete Jakari is, but to me, you got to be able to at least get 4 yards. If you can give me 4 yards, we're good. You know what I mean? You got to be able, hey, it's a 3rd and 3 and everything clears out. You got to be able to get me that first down. And to me, that's the biggest thing that I teach a lot of my young quarterbacks, is that I don't need you guys to run fast, but I need you guys to be quick enough to get from point A to point B, which is about 3 to 4 yards. After that, it's up to them to make guys miss. I don't need the most dynamic quarterback, But I definitely agree on, you need someone that can extend plays. You need someone that's at least athletic enough, to get the first down. I don't expect quarterbacks to get like a 3rd and 12, but if it's like a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, then yeah, I expect you to be at least tough enough, athletic enough, to get 3 yards. It's not that far.
Yeah.
So
You trust Tyler Van Dyke to get you those 4 or 5 yards?
oof. You know what? With Tyler, though, like, to be honest with you, like, I low-key don't know if I even want him to. Well, I mean, it's the same. He's faster than Brad Kaya, but it's the same thing as, like, Brad is that, like, when they know you're not as mobile, those defensive linemen, especially and linebackers, they'll do a really good job of trying to take your head off. Like, there were a couple of times, like, I remember the Florida State game where Brad runs, he gets the first and he slides. And when he does, a defensive lineman, a linebacker went right over the top and they hit heads. So they definitely take advantage, quarterback out the pocket. Now he's not a defensive player. Like, I'm going to try to hit him as hard as I can.
Yeah.
That would be my biggest thing with Tyler is that if you can get it, but like, don't take that back. There will be certain times, it's right for a second half, fourth quarter, it's a big 3rd down, maybe about to score, but yeah, you put your head down. But if there's times to where, you got to slide, you got to, live the next down. To me, I think he's someone that him being healthier is a lot more important than, him sacrificing his body repeatedly. There should be situations to where, you got to put the team first. But at the end of the day, if they wind up knocking you out in the 1st or 2nd quarter because you're recklessly trying to get first downs, and that doesn't help the team.
Sure.
And I think for the quarterback position, people at least understand that side of like, hey, if he slides. But, if it's a 4th and 2 and you're going for it, then you got to put your shoulder down and try to get that one. So,
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate that. Where are you right now? It seems like is that like a? Seems like
I'm in the office.
I
I have Rayshon Scott with me, former Miami receiver. So we're doing some business related stuff with him. So he's been like coming in and out. But yeah, I'm in the office. There's some whiteboard stuff behind me, and actually this whole desk has been a whiteboard. So.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about you, man. Like, what do you got going on? And I saw it, like your profile picture is something that.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. So we'll start off with. So the first thing I do is I train quarterback. So I run quarterback country, really Tampa, but I'm all over the state of Florida. So I train quarterbacks. Basically, the lowest I like to go is probably about 8 years old because I feel like they're younger than that. It's just too much. But from about 8 years old all the way up to college, NFL.
That's pretty low, though.
Yeah, I like, but I like
low.
it that way. You know what I mean? Because I can teach them simple mechanics. It's a lot easier, for them to create good muscle memory. The older the kid is, like if I get a kid that's like 15, 16 years old and he's been throwing bats since he was 10, it's a lot harder for me to correct, his muscle memory. So I tell a lot of, parents saying, hey, if you want to wait till he's 10, 11 years old, that's no problem. But the earlier you get him in here, the more muscle memory he's able to create, which helps him, when he gets older, not having to think as much. A lot of guys get frustrated because I show them on film they're doing it right, but they don't feel like they're doing it right because they've created so many bad habits that it's really hard to break. And so that's just where, I like the younger kids because they're a lot easier, to just help them out from a younger age without having to create so much frustration. And then the next one, like you said earlier, so my NFT profile, my profile picture on Twitter is an NFT. So long story short, it's a group called Miami Millionaires Club. And no, you don't have to be a millionaire to join. It's just like our ideology is that we want to help the student athletes at some point to be a millionaire, whether, it's you going into your professional sports career, whether it's you, owning your own business, et cetera, whatever you kind of want to do, we want to help facilitate you with that. And so we've actually been honored with, by the university that March 28th and April 4th, we're teaching them both public relations on March 28th, and then we're teaching them real estate on April 4th. If it goes well, they actually want to integrate it into the university. So it's something that, I've been working on for probably the last year and a half. One thing I'm really big on is really networking. I would always say it's not really what you know, it's who you know. At the end of the day, if I can help a business saying, oh yeah, like I know you guys do this. I have, 3 business partners that are all kind of in the same field. I would love to connect you to see if there's business you guys can do. That to me is more important than saying, hey, I have a degree in psychology. Well, there's probably a ton of people that have a degree in psychology. What do you bring to the table that kind of makes you above and beyond? And so that's where I think networking helps. We're trying to help, student athletes learn how to own and operate their own small business. So a lot of the speakers that will come in are really big into like internships. I've even, talked to university about once the kids graduate, being able to give them a $10,000 business grant. So we're actually putting our money where our mouth is. But a lot of it starts with the education side. So for the people that buy the NFT, there's a couple of stuff that it comes with. So one, it's a digital collectible. So you guys own it. It's verified on the blockchain. Next, we do have events that we do with the student athletes. So last year during Art Basel, we rented out Pilos for the people that live in Miami. It's a club there. We had, Tracy Howard, defensive back. He's in the rap game. Cleveland Reed, offensive lineman. He's in the rap game. Colin, his uncle is Flow Rider. So next year we'll have Colin and his uncle perform. I've been trying to reach out to Chad Thomas. For the people that, I've been watching my football for a minute. If you guys remember Jaren Williams, he's into the rap game now. So I've been trying to, pull people that, after their careers are in the music game and saying, hey, like this is the way for you guys, show the world or really show the Miami fan, the music that you have and see if these guys kind of resonate with the music that you're creating. So we do different events. We've actually have box seats for the next 2 years. So every game we give it about 4 to 6 tickets. We'll have myself, different alumni. Like I usually have Amon Richards. I've had Evidence and Joku. I've had Ethnic Sands. I've had Beeson come through. So each week is different. My business partners come in. We give this away for free with the purchase of the NFT. And then lastly, we're actually going to, once we start teaching these student athletes, we're going to give, the MMC holders, what I call them, actual access to the business module. So I'm working with the university to actually be able to record it. And the only people that have access to that will be the student athletes themselves at the university. And then the people that, have bought in to the Miami Millionaires Club program.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's been a lot. Trust me. It's funny. I actually have I'm meeting with some Miami alumni on Friday. So this kind of pitch is what I'm working on. How can they help out some different ways? So for me, it's really about, if you guys go on Twitter, if you look up Miami Millionaires Club, we pop up. It's basically a Miami duck, and we did our own nuances to it. So we actually own it through copyright, and we own everything about it. But the NFTs are about $100. It's on Solana blockchain if you guys are into crypto. If you're not, there's even a way for you to purchase with a debit or credit card. So you don't have to have Solana. You don't have to have anything really. You can just put your debit card down. It'll purchase it. There is something called a Phantom wallet, which is PHANTOM. That's for free. It's very easy to access, but that allows you to actually hold your NFT. So once you purchase it, either you can keep it on the website that it's on, or you can transfer it over to your own personal wallet. You can show it in there. But we are going to do some events very soon, especially when the football season comes around, that the only way to have access, to myself, to former alumni, to my business partners is to actually have this NFT.
Wow, sounds good. I think me and you have to connect after this podcast so you can, teach me a little bit more about NFTs.
Yeah, definitely will.
So I could be a millionaire, man. That's the goal.
All right, that's the goal for everybody.
So it's MiamiMillionairesClub.com. Is that the website?
.io. Yeah, it's MiamiMillionairesClub.io. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thanks for joining me on the Storm Tracker podcast. Look forward to seeing everything that you're up to, especially all of that work that you're doing with the kids, developing quarterbacks. Awesome. Do want to say one thing. You said Miami Duck. It's Miami Ibis. I know.
It is an Ibis. It is.
Yeah.
I love
to be mad about that.
It's funny because my business partner, he was like, "Are we drawing a duck?" Because we were like, we had an artist, and I was like, "Nah, it's an Ibis." But I was like, "It really doesn't look like an Ibis." But when you go around campus, the Ibises are everywhere. So yeah, I know.
Yeah, definitely. Just wanted to clarify that. But yeah, appreciate you again joining me on this podcast, and look forward to the work that you do, and maybe you can join me again later this spring, or definitely during the season.
Yeah, I'm down. Thank you for having me.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, thanks. You too.